bottom of New Zealand's South Island, Bluff is one of those places you go to just to say you've been there. Many of these old cars may have been here before. Veterans of 60 to 80 years motoring, there's no telling the roads they've been and the potholes they've seen. They're just some of over 90 vehicles that'll leave Invercargill to travel to the other end of New Zealand to celebrate 100 years of motoring. These relics of the road survive only because of the thousands of hours put in by their owners in restoring them. For one or two on the tour, that continued right up to the last minute. This 1908 Vauxhall Racer is old blue. Though Jack Newell won't be racing her in this tour, it's a celebration. Led off by Eric Robbins and his 1906 French-built Duroc, the oldest car in the lineup.
What number are you? Cheerio, everybody, and thanks for your help.
Do you think you'll get there?
Of course we'll get there. Buicks always make the grade.
There's him. Hartley, he can go. He can go. You can leave, Bob.
All right.
46.
Long journey for an old car.
A long journey for an old man. All right, we'll see you.
Oh, here we are. You can leave.
Right, we're
you
away.
can go.
Careful now. See you there. The other end. See you at Cape Reinga. Bye.
Ahead, 2,000 kilometres of open road, including Christchurch, Blenheim, Wellington, Hastings, Auckland, and finally Whangarei, where the tour ends. But most will continue on to Cape Reinga, just to visit the other end of the country. In its own way, each car is a classic of its time. A chain-drive, single-cylinder Cadillac, flat out at 30 miles an hour. It's a commemorative tour, not a competition. An 11-day grand parade. And for some, the journey's a daunting prospect. After just 65 kilometres, a morning tea stop in Gore became a pit stop for this Chevy.
Hey? Gonna make it all around? Probably be a bit noisy by the time you get there. Yeah, we'll get the juice, man.
What do you reckon's wrong with it?
Oh, it's a Chevy. It should have been a Ford or an F.
The rest are parked outside to be admired.
Excellent.
Especially by those of a similar vintage.
They were in our time, you know, and there were some of the earlier ones that were about and how they used to perform. They were good, all right. To the Model A from the old Model T, you know, it was a great step up in the cars, wasn't it? They were really something.
The day's drive ends with a hill climb to Dunedin, with time to spare for another vital part of vintage motoring, the eternal search for spare parts. Colin Ray's looking for a head gasket for his other Buick.
You get an opportunity to have a browse, always have a look through. You never know what you'll find that'll fit your particular car.
But most people would say that this assembled heap of metal and paper material was junk.
Right. And one man's junk is another man's treasure. And in this game, you know,
what might look like a piece of junk to you or the general public is a real find for the restoration men.
To get out of Dunedin, more hills. Though there is a flatter alternative, which could tempt tour leader Earl Preston.
It steams away nicely in the hills.
But you're going to take it up?
Oh, yes, yeah, she'll fly up the hill all right. She goes happy as Larry. Only happy when she's steaming on the hills.
The Duroc was the first to come to a steaming standstill. So the faster cars could pass him, he drove on the rough at the road's edge and loosened the radiator to leaking point.
At the bottom of the radiator. The worst things happen.
We were draining the water out to save as much water as we could out of the radiator before we lost it all. That was the reason for all these all these cans resurrected on the side of the road.
The first motorcycle was imported into New Zealand in 1899. It had 3 wheels and did 10 miles an hour into the wind. The first 2-wheeler arrived in 1902. The Duroc is still running at temperature.
We're just trying to get timber, just pull it off and solder it.
And as always, everyone's stopping to see if they can help. After crossing the Waitaki River into South Canterbury, the small country town of Waimate. People on the tour for 11 days from Invercargill to Whangarei, by rule of thumb, works out to around 20,000 cups of tea for the motorists and about 20,000 gallons of fuel for the cars. In Britain, up until 1895, an Act of Parliament decreed that all self-propelled road vehicles must be manned by 3 people, one of whom must walk ahead carrying a red flag of warning. Nor could they exceed 4 miles an hour on the open road. Christchurch, the most English of all New Zealand cities. With the Avon River, its gardens, cathedral and private schools, it's a place where Jim Sullivan and his very British Bentley can feel completely at home.
It's a great machine, isn't it? Look at the metal in those mudguards, unbelievable. I can remember some of those when I was a kid. There's one there, along there, that we went to school in. Takes you there. But it's the craftsmanship in those years. You know, today you buy a motor car, it's like a woman's frock, isn't it? It goes out of order. First mistake in an intersection, you've got to buy a new car. Huh? pull the handbrake on, the doors fall off.
I think it's great that you folks have decided to commemorate this event in this very impressive and memorable way. So I wish you Godspeed on the remaining part of your journey, and thank you for coming to Christchurch and giving a lot of pleasure to our citizens here. Thank you. Now, the longest day's drive of the tour, 200 miles to Blenheim. The big old cars like Bob Scott's 1913 Belgian Metallurgique, it's a breeze. Major breakdowns are allowed to be towed to the end of that stage, where the Fiat will get its gearbox fixed.
The baggers. That's the bearing. We've got to drive it in between that thing and the bearing and hammer it out. Haven't been hitting it hard enough. I've been too soft on it.
Midnight in Blenheim, and the Fiat's getting its gearbox rejuvenated.
All right, we'll get it for another.
They should get it going in time for the next stage, as tomorrow's a rest day. Time for Doug Ritter to make some adjustments to his 1909 Renault.
I jumped out of second gear on about 3 occasions. But I've just got this new bush in the selector so that she'll run a bit more freely on the shaft. The old gearbox is rather like a saucepan with a good large lid on it. The Renault boys, they did a terrific job, really, and they're still at it. Someone asked me the other day, what's it worth? I said, do you ever put a price on your son or your daughter? No, you won't part with this.
So far, some of them have been keeping big end bearings together with leather, cut off their trouser belts, and changing pistons by the roadside.
I've done 800 miles, you know, at 20 to 25 miles an hour.
This was the only non-travelling day of the tour, designed to also give the drivers a break. Before the following dawn, they all had to be aboard the Cook Strait ferry to cross to the North Island and Wellington.
Lovely old girls here.
Turn left, follow that car.
Okay. 3C, next lane. Let's go through. Yeah. The lane through all right. Go through that group and then turn in.
A full muster, ready to be either convoyed through the capital's motorway or led to Parliament to meet Prime Minister David Longy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All spelled correctly, too.
Yes. Yes, Longy, and broken arm.
My car did this to me. Everybody laughed at me at the hospital. I said, nobody breaks their arm these days cranking a car.
Oh, they do.
But I had to.
My father taught me how to do it so that it slipped up rather than went around. The old V8 and then the Dodge we had. Well, much better staying here.
For some of the South Islanders, this was their first taste of driving in the north. Their main concern was the busy motorways. The Gullwing Mercedes-Benz Sports. Regarded as one of the classic cars of all time, its development was a direct result of the world's first car built by Carl Benz, the founder of the company that built this champion racer of the 50s. It's on display along with 200 other historic vehicles in Southwood's Motor Museum, where the tour stopped for lunch. Old cars, strange cars, cars once driven by gangsters and film stars, they're all here. But the one that seemed to gain the tourists' attention was one of New Zealand's first cars, an 1895 Benz, the ancestor of the Gullwing. In the 1890s, the horseless carriage was illegal on New Zealand roads, but the owner of a similar car, William McLean MP, put his own private member's bill through Parliament, and the transport revolution was underway.
Anybody else that wishes to go, you can start moving out as from now, which is a little earlier than what is on your booklets. But there are 2 weddings here, and it's sort of put a little bit of pressure on it this evening.
Occasionally, we're reminded of the dusty roads of the past, but then they were much worse than this. A dust storm all summer and axle deep in mud all winter, politely referred to as colonial conditions. A tax on petrol was introduced to pay for the new roads. Road builders and engineers did some remarkable things to make driving easier and faster. The way through the Manawatu Gorge is a good example. In places, the roads are man-made shelf tacked onto sheer rock bluffs. Henry Ford's Model T, the car that put the world on wheels. Ford was the first to pay his workers the revolutionary sum of $1 an hour, and from 1908 to 1927, 16.5 million cars were built. Tin Lizzies were sophisticated, inexpensive, and reliable.
And I got a job driving a Bentley for £2 a week. And it was a Bentley sports model, and it had done 109 mile an hour on the Brooklands track. And I, living down the east end of London, I used to knock off about 11 o'clock at night when he came out best, you know. So I drove around Buckingham Palace, and I don't think the King or the Queen raised their hats, because I made such a hell of a noise changing gears. It had a dirty big brake on the right-hand side. And no doors. Only the doors that side.
Well, I never.
And that was
£2 a week?
Yeah, that was a Bentley.
Well, I never. Thank you for the
And
help.
don't say when you develop that skating pommy bastard, because I'm not a pom now.
Absolutely amazing. 80 years old.
Jack and Leith Newell, owners and crew of Old Blue. This 1908 Vauxhall once thundered down a beach at 72 miles an hour, but was mothballed in the 20s and was fired up again for the first time in 60 years, just a day before the tour started.
If one is interested in old motor cars, I think to sit there and drive down the road and in amongst the modern traffic, there is quite a sense of achievement and enjoyment. and it just makes one realise the progress of the motor cars. I think there's a real advancement, but I still enjoy my old motor cars. Get plenty more 1985 models, but no more of these.
Some people restore cars and sell them and do another one. They're interested in the actual restoration. Some of us, our cars become part of us, and we are very fond of them. It's the challenge of building something up from nothing, making it go, and then driving and getting there.
The Duckworth's 1909 Wolseley Siddeley was made by a company formerly known as the Wolseley Sheep Shearing Company. Their first car designer was Herbert Austin, went on to build his own cars, becoming the most successful motor company in England before going bankrupt and taken over by Morris in 1927. Hastings, where many of the local motels look like car repair yards of the early 1900s. There's always something that needs to be done.
We oil this every morning here, and that allows the oil comes out here and keeps the chain there. But it's designed, the oil just, you put the oil in and it leaks out over 500 miles.
Bill Peddington's 1910 Regal, one of only a handful of its type left in the world. With original acetylene lights, it's still driven and not on display in a museum.
Ah, you little beauty. That'll keep you going for a while.
Thanks, Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Put the old hat on again.
Road gangs have been working for days clearing this landslide, and the traffic is stopped for hours at a time while tons of rock are bulldozed out of the way. As the motor car progressed in both style and technical development, it became a lot more complicated. Pioneer drivers needed to carry spare conrods, pistons and the like, which also meant they needed the mechanical know-how to carry out the repairs at the side of the road.
What do you think of these?
Oh, real neat.
Riding them.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, man, it'll be real neat.
Having made it to Rotorua, the Smiths, father and son, were worried that they mightn't get much further, though they had set a record, the most punctures.
11, 13. Lucky number. We must come right. What's going wrong that you're getting so many? Firestone tyres. You can't buy the rubber liners to go in them. Just a bit rough inside.
We're getting a fairly good sort of pit crew technique and changing.
7 minutes. On the road, that's not bad when we're in a hurry.
This 1925 Elvis belongs to Alistair McIntosh. The identical engine beside it, a recent find, doesn't. Yet.
That motor could be running in a couple of hours. It's all in virtually running condition.
Just 2 hours.
I would say so. Yeah.
It's not just sales talk.
No, it's not sales talk. I'm not trying to sell it. If you've got something like that, it's a prize plump. He may have something that's, or have access to something that's usable for me.
Some sort of exchange and barter will doubtless be entered into now, and meetings will be held at the highest level, and the outcome will probably be known in a year or so.
Well, I've got a Model T at home. The motor's not going at the moment, but take the rim and tyres and finish the run.
Oh, straight ward one.
All that matters.
Getting to the finish line. Right, let's go and see if we can jack that and get this thing mobile.
All right.
Before it gets dark.
For those from the south may have read where the thermal activity is dead here in Rotorua. Let me assure you, it's still very much alive, and those hot balls will be...
It's nostalgic to an old bloke like me to look at these. I've had some funny old cars in my time, a Swift, and a 1 horsepower, 8 horsepower, 1-cylinder Rover, 1912. They were interesting cars. Had iron studs in the tyres like you have hobnails in your boots. This is lovely, these ones.
You'll have seen many of these before.
Oh, yes, years ago. I can't see much at all now. I'm getting too old. I'm just on 80.
Don't look it.
No, I feel it. I'm going to fall down one of these days and never get up.
Now, you behave yourself, young man.
Along with the transport revolution, changes in the way of life were reflected in the style and fashion of the car, not to mention the comfort. But there are some advantages touring with the top down in the Ritchie's 1917 Dodge.
In an open car like this, you'd be surprised. The smells, for instance. You smell gorse, you smell broom, you smell a dead sheep. And you see so much more. You're higher, you see over everybody's fence. And you're in a modern car, how many people wave to you? You're in one of these and everybody waves.
Vintage and veteran motoring is more popular in New Zealand than other countries. Cars have been easily obtainable, and some were bought for next to nothing, though the time and restoration may be considerable. Some cost more than others to run. Bentleys, like Jim Sullivan's.
The thirsty-old brutes, and there we are. It's like, I think, summed up there, a client of mine from Christchurch said there was a Harvard flew down from Auckland,
and chap was refuelling at the pilot. He said, chap went up, how are you getting on? Good, he said, I'm converting petrol to pleasure. I suppose that's what we're doing here too.
What do you define motoring? Just driving or?
Just driving along, yeah. I like driving briskly too. If you drive too fast, of course, you'll miss the scenery, I know. But...
What's brisk in the Bentley here?
Well, over the limit is brisk. Better not tell that to Transport Department. But they spell it out to you very, very well in the original handbook of these cars. They say if you overhaul the motor or you start with a new car, don't exceed 3,500 revs. If you do, go and buy yourself a new crankcase, block, pistons, rods and crankshaft, start all over again. Bentleys never break down. They just gloriously blow up and that's it. You have a very expensive bill usually.
I thought it might be the diff. The oil with the gearbox and diff together, the oil on a lot of downhill running drains from the diff into the gearbox. Just a wee noise, just started to growl. So we thought, well, we'll just stop and check it, and sure enough, put my finger in, and that's right on the bottom. We should be right.
How much is driving a car like yours depend on keeping your ears fairly finely tuned?
Quite a lot. You've got to listen for noises and sounds all the time. Okie doke.
Earl Preston's relationship with his car is so close he's fixed to standing on the social ladder.
Overlands are always a bit along the Model T line, perhaps, if I can say, a bit better made. But they're sort of south of the track girls, and the garter on the leg, and a barroom gal, and she's no lady, she's a working girl, and she's seen a few tough times, I think, done a lot of hard work.
Well, they thought you must have got lost.
Oh, no, we just had a nice, relaxing day. We've just been chugging along quietly.
No mishaps apart from running out of petrol at a final checkpoint.
Who told you that? Oh, yeah, that was a bit of fine, what do you call it, just a bit too fine judgment on fuel economy, but you forget after 3 days, because I can motor for 3 days, this sort of motoring for 3 days without refilling. She's very economical.
Cambridge, the last established provincial town they'll pass through. Tonight they stay in Hamilton City, and tomorrow it's Auckland, and the busiest motorway of them all.
You read about there somewhere? Oh, the motorway? Oh, no, that won't worry.
We're just trying to find where the sewer tour goes.
We get run over, we get run over. Have you been to Auckland before?
About 1949.
It saves me a lot because I've got to go out to it and come back.
Oh, yeah. We've no idea where it is at all.
Looking forward to going up the motorway?
Yes? No.
Why not?
Oh, I want to keep out of the traffic if I can. We're not used to this traffic. Brakes are not very good standard.
behind the back there, Dan. That's because you can go to optimistic view.
The final day and the final test. Every car that began the tour in Invercargill also left on this stage. Sadly, the Buick has ground to a halt, just 30 kilometres from the finish.
You broke a conrod, I would think. Serious? Yes, reasonably so. There, never mind. We will sit and wait it out. Hope it dries.
If it is a conrod,
one under the back seat.
You've got a spare one?
Yes. But that mightn't be the end of it, might it? There's no way we'll shift there at the moment. Never fear, we'll get the long array one way or another, even if we've got to walk.
Duck shooting weather. Never mind, we're on the way again. As long as that keeps purring.
A very damp tour leader rolls up to the finish.
Beautiful. Love it. Well done, darling. You're a sweetheart. Huh? Hasn't she done well?
2,000 kilometres in a 76-year-old car, driven by a man that's not much younger.
Finally made it. Buicks are providing the backup vehicles.
Well, let's go inside out of the weather, I suppose. No use hanging around out here. Woo.
It's been a delight to drive. I used to wonder once, now and again, you know, over the last few miles, don't let anything happen, don't let anything happen. And she's away. Oh, well, all I'm ready for now is a good hot bath.
A hitchhiker with a difference, the Buick. But it made it. They all did, due to the ability and perseverance of their drivers and crew, though the real heroes were the cars. 94 of them, some nearly 80 years old. To some extent, this was a greater feat than some of the early pioneering journeys. Much of the credit for that can go to the car's original builders. Their craftsmanship and ingenuity has lasted through to the end of motoring's first century.